All right. So a lawyer used to cost anywhere between $300 and $1,200 an hour on average. And this is just like 10, 15 years ago. I remember these prices. An AI can now draft your contract, file your trademark, and review your compliance documents for a $20 a month, basically AI subscription. ChatGPT, Grok, Anthropic, Gemini, they're all basically, capable. The same story is playing out in accounting, financial planning, and consulting. Goldman Sachs says 300 million white collar jobs face meaningful AI exposure. We've all been hearing it, right? Basically, what they've been saying is some version of AI is going to come after all knowledge based business. So these are all knowledge based. For solopreneurs who've always paid full price for services they could barely afford, this is actually good news. So let's be specific about what's moved. Small business attorneys typically charge, as I said, anywhere between for small business, maybe $300 to $600 an hour. Standard contracts, NDAs, terms of services, privacy policies, documents that previously took hours to draft and hundreds of dollars to review are now produced in minutes by Claude or ChatGPT. Harvey AI, built specifically for legal work, is now being used by major law firms. Clio's research Clio's research shows the billable hour model is under direct structural pressure for the first time in decades. The same shift is in accounting, bookkeeping that previously needed a part-time bookkeeper, $25 to $45 an hour. I remember, yes, a business where we had a part-time bookkeeper that was always there, and we had to pay like basically like it was a full, not a full time, but a weekly employee. Is now handled by tools like Pilot and Bench. Tax preparation for straightforward returns is increasingly automated. Financial projections and scenario modeling that used to require a consultant are now prompts. Um, yeah, $400 for a document that the AI now does in just a few minutes. I understand why lawyers charge that. Now, actually, I don't, but I also understand why this is changing. Both things are true, and one of them is more relevant to your bank account. Well, my personal experience is I had a legal battle once in a business that I owned about 23 years ago. There was three partners, and one was going off the deep end and wanted to do things his own way, and the other two of us were just like, no, we want to continue doing things the way that's working. Turned into a legal battle, and the partner that was trying to move the whole company to another state or wanted the company to support him in another state was chasing a girl. Funny how that works, right? He met a woman that lived somewhere else, and he wanted to basically go chase her and enforce the company to kind of like pay for everything. And we were just like, there's no way this will kill the business. And next thing you know, he's trying to force things, trying to force lawyers in to split up the company, this and that. And we kind of had to go through this full legal battle, and it ended up costing, I'm going to say, probably $15,000 in just lawyers' fees, just going to meetings and eventually having a contract written up, plus the retainer, and having the lawyers consult, all because of somebody wanting to make some dumb emotional decision. And the contracts are always written in a language that nobody understands except for lawyers and legal professionals, which makes no sense to me. Like, why should a contract be written in wording that nobody can understand except for a lawyer? I wonder why, because then they're the only ones that can interpret it, and then you got to keep paying them and hiring them just to basically do little things. I have personally used AI to create a contract between me and a person. Little things like, there's a lot of little agreements and stuff that if you just put a contract together, it's not necessarily you have to use it or, but it's something that holds people accountable. And you can just go back and go, look, this was our agreement. We created a contract. Even if you use ChatGPT or Grok, you don't, I'm going to say you don't need a lawyer to review it unless it's something major. And then, obviously you have to protect yourself. So I'm not saying don't use professionals, but you can do the first draft and you can do a lot of little things now with AI, which is great for small businesses. I mean, it just makes it. I remember like these things can kill a business, and the society we live in is such a legal, sue for everything. And if you have more money than the other one, you can literally destroy a business or hurt them just by basically outpricing them and making it so they can't defend themselves. Um, Hopefully, this is all starting to change, right? So there's three categories that matter most for solopreneurs. Legal, first draft contracts and agreements, NDAs, trademark filings, terms of service, basic compliance documents. AI handles these well enough for a working first draft. The standard caveat stands. Have a lawyer review anything significant before signing, but the first draft that used to cost 500 now costs nothing. And with the internet and AI, there's actually very cheap lawyers now online that can review documents because they work online and they don't have to pay for an office and legal assistance and this and that. Um, you can find, very capable lawyers that for an affordable price can review something that you've basically created in ChatGPT. Yeah, and then they can make suggestions and it's affordable. That's the main thing. But the first draft that used to cost 500 now costs nothing with AI. So accounting and finance, that's the second thing, right? Bookkeeping, expense categorization, cash flow projections, financial modeling, basic tax preparation for simple returns. The repetitive layer of financial admin that used to require 10 hours a month from a bookkeeper is increasingly automated. Consulting and strategy, market research, competitive analysis, SOPs, basically operating procedures, business plans, pricing frameworks. AI produces a usable starting point in minutes. Not finished strategy, but a first draft that previously cost thousands. But here's the thing, as AI improves and you start to figure out which models are better for certain things, they're getting better and better to the point to where actually hiring a human might actually be a risk, because there's a lot of studies that show that as we move into this AI world, it's the human element that becomes the bottleneck, that actually becomes the error, that becomes the mistake. That's just because we're talking knowledge-based business, memorizing, things, laws, procedures, whatever it is. We just can't memorize things as well as an AI can. So here's the honest part. Not everything has moved, and pretending otherwise will cost you. Litigation requires a lawyer still. If you're in it's funny because if you go and talk to a lawyer or a doctor and you say I'm using AI, they will gaslight you because it's their profession. They will gaslight you and make some comment like you're being stupid to even go that route. But of course, that is cope. And of course, that's just what you're going to get. So be prepared for that, right? If you're in a real dispute, a contract gone wrong, an employment claim, a regulatory action, AI is a research tool, I would say at best. It's more than that, but you can think of it that way. The judgment calls and misrepresentation in a genuine legal fight will need a qualified human being. Complex tax situations, multiple entities, international operations, significant asset transactions need a CPA. The downside risk of getting these wrong is too high for an AI first draft. Anything that requires a licensed professional sign off, a formal opinion, a registered filing, an audit, still requires a human at the end of the chain for now. Now, okay, well, the rule of thumb, the higher the stakes and the more specific the situation, the less you should rely on AI alone. I agree with that. Use it to understand the landscape and prepare. Use a professional to make the call that matters. So if you're just using general AI, like a language model that knows a little bit about everything, there is the mistakes. AI does give you an answer no matter what. It very rarely, like an AI, like if you ask ChatGPT, it's usually not going to tell you, I have no idea. I'm not really sure. It'll just make something up that's closest to what it can find, based on its model. And there are hallucinations, but those are getting better. But here's the thing. As we move into specific, narrow-focused AI applications, which we talked about earlier, that there's legal ones. There's even ones for doctors where they're designed to be AI and to only have the knowledge in that category and everything that applies to that and to focus on that. They don't hallucinate as much. They remember things and they will catch things that a human will miss. And it can be argued that if you have a narrow version AI, focused AI version, it'll actually make less mistakes than any professional out there. But that's still relatively new and in the making. But I mean, this is all going to be 6 months down the road. So yeah, use AI to understand the landscape. Use a human to make the call that matters. I mean, this is a moving target, and this is all starting to change as we go. But I would say yes. If something very important, do the initial work, use AI, flesh it out, and then find an expert to basically review it and help you. And they're a lot more affordable now. They have to be because they're all competing against AI. So 3 moves worth making. First, add up what you spend on professional services, say last year, lawyer fees, accountant, bookkeeping, financial advisor, any consultants. Most solopreneurs are surprised by the total. That number is your baseline for figuring out what AI can now handle. Good idea, right? Second, use AI for first drafts. The next time you need an NDA or a contract agreement, prompt Claude first, get the 80% draft, then pay a lawyer to review the final version. You've just cut the billable hours and the bill. Third, use AI for the financial work you've been putting off. Cash flow projections, pricing models, expense analysis. These are now prompts and not projects. The insight is accessible even if you've never hired a consultant. Actually, one of the things that AI can do now is it can protect you more, because there's a lot of times where you won't do a contract because it's too much of a hassle to hire a lawyer to do it. And you're just like, I don't think we need a lawyer for this. Let's just do a handshake agreement. Well, a lot of those types of things now, you can kind of create your own contract right there, within your whatever company, or you're hiring somebody, you can create these agreements. And what it does, it just holds people accountable. Even if it's just you and your partner want to make a quick agreement, usually, because I've been in a lot of businesses, and it's funny how people have a very selective memory on what you agreed on if it wasn't written down. And just writing something down somewhere, but if you just create a contract or an agreement, you don't even have to call it a legal contract. You just say, here's an agreement. I want to put this down in a contract so that we're clear and we don't forget what we said and agreed to. And then you can hold them accountable, right? And you can do that a lot more now because it's a lot more capable. All right. So yeah, prompt Claude, get the 80% draft, and pay a lawyer to review it. Yeah, you've just cut. So, professional services were expensive because expertise was scarce and time was billable. AI doesn't eliminate expertise, but it has ended the scarcity. For big companies who could always afford lawyers and accountants, not much changes. For the solopreneur, which I've always been in that category, and this is kind of what I want to cover, is really the solopreneur, the side hustle, and then AI in the biology, anti-aging category for us in our 40s, 50s, and 60s. But solopreneur who's been operating without proper contracts, avoiding the accountant, making decisions without data, now we got AI that can help with this a lot. And it's only going to get better, and it's going to get more amazing. So, the tools cost less than a single hour of what they're replacing. Subscribe to Age to Win, and we will keep covering more and more of this stuff. All right, guys, I want to show you something that I've been doing really quick before I move on to the next video. So, talking about consultants and legal, one of the coolest things that you can do is you can go to Notebook LM if you have a Google account or a Gmail, and it's free. And what I'm doing is I'm creating these, I'm going to create a roundtable of experts that I can ask questions. So like Alex Hormozi, you guys probably know who that is. This is free, right? You can create a brand new notebook, and then you can add a source. And if you have a plugin, a free plugin called YouTube to LLM, you can go to a YouTube channel, somebody like Alex who does these hour-long videos, and you can basically clone him and all his videos, and then you can basically create a prompt like I did right here, I created a prompt where I just basically said, "You're going to be my business mentor," blah 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 blah, and I can now like ask questions and talk to Alex Hermosi in a sense, where he it just draws from, a couple hundred of his videos and his interviews and stuff like that, and it's amazing because it sounds like him. It gives great advice, and I'm in the process of putting together a roundtable of experts that can help mentor me, and when I need something, and I'm gonna get like I'm not gonna go crazy, but I'm gonna put together like six in different areas, and then just see how that goes. Because one of the things I want to do in this channel is I want to start to build an AI business or some AI, side hustles and kind of share it. And, as I dig through these kind of things, I'll share it with you guys on this channel. So until the next video, let's get it.